Hello there and welcome to the Edinburgh International Book Festival. My name is Greame Virtue. I'm a journalist based in Glasgow and I'm very excited and a little bit nervous to be chairing this stripped event with Kieron Gillen and Greame McKelvie. The reason I'm a little bit nervous is because these guys are insanely talented. Kieron Gillen is a fantastical writer. He's very, very funny. And he's
I'm in the wrong panel here.
And he's also very emotional, and I think it's quite hard to do emotion well in comics, but Kieron seems to have cracked it. Greime McKelvie's art is totally distinctive. I think you can recognize it from anywhere. It's got such a beautiful, clean line, and you know, everything looks sexy, everything looks cool, but it's certainly not superficial. I mean, I think his artwork contains multitudes. So I'm a big fan of Young Avengers. I hope some of you guys are fans of Young Avengers. If you've read the book or heard it, if you'd like to raise your hand, that's a good sign.
No, just Jamie didn't.
I also think maybe Jeremy Paxman must be a fan of Young Avengers because he seems to have based his new look on Novar in issue 8. He's got a beard. We'll talk a little about the creative process behind Young Avengers and their other work. I need to ask you to make sure your mobile phones are switched off.
That's a good point, actually.
Unless your ringtone is "Be My Baby" by the Ronettes, I think we could get a bit of mileage out of that. There will also be a signing immediately after this event in the signing tent, which is directly next door. We've got the first trade of Young Avengers, which isn't even supposed to be out until the end of September, but due to some Cree technology, we've managed to get those copies. So that is the end of the housekeeping. Would you please welcome Kieron Gillen and Greame McKelvie? So quite often at the book festival, a novelist will start with reading a passage from their books. You'd think you couldn't do that with comics, but these guys know how to subvert the form. So yeah, we're going to start with a script from Young Avengers. So Kieron, if you'd like to read it and give us a little bit of context.
Yeah, I'm going to actually stand because I feel like a grown up.
Please use our lectern.
Press the button.
I can press the button too.
Okay.
Or
because I can just lean over and.
Do you want to? I mean,
However you want to do it, really. I think it's.
It's not working.
That was a good start.
The screen's off. Basically, me and it suddenly amused us to. We're talking about the possibility of reading, and no one ever really sees the scripts, and the scripts are kind of only really like part of what me and Jamie do. As in, I write scripts for Jamie, which are fundamentally that looks awful.
That's a good start. No, we don't want the networks.
I do scripts for Jamie, which are fundamentally different than I'd write for most people. They're kind of like one half of a letter, and they're kind of a start of communication because there's so much that's done after the fact in instant message or over the phone or in pubs and with the kind of the dialogue. However, you know, I think it's kind of cute. It's kind of essentially it's me writing a letter to Jamie, and it kind of feels right if you see what we were talking about in terms of the starting point. And I'm going to skip the bullshit at the start and go that.
Go ahead.
Okay. 1.1. We open tight on Kate Bishop, Hawkeye. She looks a little bed hairy in a delightfully dishevelled way in a kind of morning after the party. She lies on a pillow facing us, covers up to her neck. She's just woke up. She has the expression of someone who's just trying to put together why on earth she's here. The captures are Kate. There's also a little punch than I normally do over in Jim, Journey into Mystery, which speaks to their intention. And part of me is thinking we may use proper capitalisation for thought captions. It just seems to sit on the page better, to be discussed, etc. Caption, I'm in a bed. It's not mine. This isn't you. We're behind her as he shits... we're behind her. Well, that was a different direction we were considering. We're behind her as she sits up, looking around the room. The room appears to be a slightly messy, hipsterish apartment. There's two doors to the room. One leads to an ensuite shower and is slightly ajar. Light comes in through it. Maybe a little steam. The other one is shut. Both look pretty much like normal doors. Dominating the room is a large set of curtains, like in a hotel. It may be a shitty little room, but the implication is it's one hell of a view. There's bright light creeping in through where the curtain joins, the implication being it's morning. Other details. Some clothes lying around the room, some hers, some his. It's a fancy party they were at, so think suit and evening dress in a smart young style. Mixed in amongst them are some normal clothes, left in a lazy, not done the washing way by the owner. T-shirts, jeans, whatever. Kate is wearing one of of his overlarge t-shirts. She was sleeping in it. Could we have prints on the walls? Classic movies from across the last 100 years, plus bands, musicians too. You know, the sort of person who specifically obsesses over a single country's output. As in, you know, a bunch of French stuff from a wide period. Whoever owns this place is like that, but for the whole of Earth. Most relevantly, there's a vinyl record player in the pride of place in the room. There's stacks of vinyl either side, a bit like an altar. Lots here, but doesn't need to be in this panel. Just really filling stuff in it as we progress. Caption. I can hear the shower. He's in the shower. Him. 1.3. Kate steps out of the bed carefully, bare legs beneath a t-shirt. Perhaps something agreeably goofy, like still having one sock on. She's looking around gingerly, stepping as if she's afraid the floor's going to collapse. This is all new for her. She's both excited and nervous. Caption. For a second, some part of me thinks, I should be ashamed. 1.4. On her, tight. A tiny, knowing smile. I think that part of me is really stupid. 1.5. She moves carefully towards the window. Caption. Do I just get the hell out of here? Caption. Do I go for breakfast? Caption. Where does he keep the coffee? Caption. What did he say his name was? 1.6. And she starts to pull open the curtains. Light spills over her face. Where am I? Sort of reverse, with Kate standing there looking out in wonder. She doesn't feel confused or scared. She's got a smile on her face. We're not sure this is actually me being a really bad writer, in that I mentioned the smile on her face when she's facing the wrong way. So I missed that now. Anyway, wow, she's just accepting this. At this point we realise Kate, oh no, I've skipped the caption. This is the worst reading ever. No, 1.1 was the view, that was 2.2. I'm not a bad writer, I'm okay. At this point we realise Kate isn't exactly a normal girl either. Anyway, Kate looking out in the background, Norvoy steps out the shower, drying off his hair. I'd love to have him naked, but I don't think we could find a way to make it work on the page, so boxer shorts. Norvar then, our alien hipster boy, the sort of live build and charm makes every female X-Men reader friend of mine demand I bring Gambit back on the team. The rider here did seem kind of long. Did I wake you up? Kate Hudson of Earth, I wrote in the script, because I got her name wrong in the script. I've got this kind of casual way of just mixing up people's names, so not Kate Bishop. 2.3, Kate turns surprised, her face wincing slightly, as if she's not sure it's right. Norval stops, drying his hair, smiling as he moves past her. He clearly doesn't care. No, you didn't. Norman? Norval. Kate turns, realising who he actually is. He makes his way over to the vinyl, flicking through it. Oh yeah, you kicked our ass once. And you were an Avenger, Marvel boy, the Protector? Both. Neither really worked out. 3.1, we're in front of Norval. Him drawing a record from its sleeve. I think it's an original 7-inch single of Be My Baby by the Ronettes. Behind him, Kate has made her way back to the bed. She's sitting down on its edge. My people ordered me to stay away from Earth. The Avengers felt similarly, which is fair. I didn't exactly do myself proud. 3.2, we're back a bit. Kate is asking questions and Norvar is standing with his back to her, arms raised excitedly. Perhaps the strings of notes rise up from the now playing record. So are you still here? Oh, listen to the drums. Listen to them. Kate tilts her head. She's not sure what to make of it. Norvar has started to dance without self-consciousness and easy passion. He's dancing because he loves it. He's dancing if he's alone. Kate, this is the 60s, yeah? It is! 3.4. Norvar as he dances, his eyes shut, a smile on his lips. Kate, I come from a dimension where there's transcendental peace and universal enlightenment, but there are no close harmony girl groups. 3.5. He glances towards us with a beaming smile. How could anyone leave a world that makes things as wonderful as this? 3.6, we're behind Kate again. She's now lying in bed, on her side, watching Norval continue his private happy dance. Sun beams in from the left, it's beautiful and tranquil, and I lie in this strange bed and watch this beautiful alien boy dance to the music my parents loved, and think, this is everything I could always hope for. 3.7, Kate responds, turning towards the window with obvious surprise. I was considering dropping this panel and having the caption on the previous image and let's see how it works. Caption, at which point the scrolls attack. This page should be constructed as a single unit. Panel beats can cross pages. We go into a We Free-esque micro moments vision. I'm going to describe the main beats to show on the page and add more and add small moments and whatever. Go all Saul Bass on our ass in terms of how they're arranged. We turn to the window and flying towards it on rocket packs and laser guns are scrolls. The scrolls are the Kree Kill crew. They're important in our second arc. To front load the surprise, they aren't actually scrolls. They're a new group of alien shape changers pretending to be skulls because scrolls are cool. They are the intergalactic equivalent of kids from the Midlands pretending to be from South Central LA. They're wearing space armor, but should be kind of cool. We're going to do a Scree call. We're kind of doing a Kree Skrull war, but ours is more like sharks versus jets than anything else. Anyway, they're a close-by boarding party. Hanging back are these kind of heavy weapon Skrull guys giving supporting fire. Norval turns, pointing towards the non-shower door, which is sliding open. Kate is already running towards it. Norval opens the drawer. In it is his 2 ornate guns. Kate down the corridor. It's a high-tech sort of room. Ahead of her is a control seat. The controls are alien. She has a what-the-fuck sort of expression. She hasn't got a clue how to fly this thing. Norval aims his gun at the windows with the Skrulls just about to get there and fires. The window explodes and the detritus of the room flies out in an excitingly decompressionary way. The Skrulls bombarded with everything from hip clothes to classic vinyl. The Kate on the control seat looking at them, but they're morphing to something that she can semi-recognise as a familiar Earth setup. She's about to grab them. They're basically turning something she can use. Behind her we see a semi-transparent force field materialise, preventing her from being vented into space. Norval stands in the coldness of space in his underwear, firing his dual guns at the pursuing skulls. The sky fills with laser light. He's pissed off. He had to destroy his record collection. The engines are engaged. Kate, with the controls, getting a hang of it. An enormous death beam fires on one of the Skrulls with heavy weapons. As the ship curls around in an arc, with Kate clearly being a skilled pilot. And on Kate, a small, proud smile hammers the thrusters forwards, and the spaceship, pursued by the Skrulls, flies away from us, engines trailing after her, the ship curling around a death beam. Interspersed with these images in black and white, or maybe black, spaced between the panels is the following text. I have no powers and not nearly enough training. I'm doing this anyway. Being a superhero is amazing. Everyone should try it. 6.7, text-only pages, double page spread on the title credits, enormous page filling, brash and fuck you obnoxious. People either get the joke and the point here or get off the train. To be honest, as well as the showmanship of all this, there's also to create a pause in the intro sequence to the main body of the rest of the story. So it's actually more about substance and style, which really is the joke. We have many levels, like Dante's Hell. And I've said before, this is the Pulp Fiction opening. They also did the credits to restart a film trick. And that is how we started Young Avengers.
I'm so glad that we got as far as the credits page, because I mean this is probably the first comic which has a credit for feels.
That's one of the things about the book. It's like Lauren and Jacob. They kind of make it. Oh, it was Jacob to begin with, and it's Jonathan now. They kind of made it their own in that way, isn't that? You know, stuff like the Yambler Tumblr page was very much their idea, and they kind of work it in. And Clayton, who does the lettering, he kind of brings his ideas to the page, and it's something we're quite open to. So it's I've said in like the gang mentality thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's what you know. It's not meant to feel like just this kind of assembly line comic.
Yeah. And the amazing double page spreads, which you know doesn't really look like much else you see in comics, Marvel or otherwise at the moment. You've kind of done these in almost every issue, and I just wondered, you know, it's in its attempt to kind of expand the storytelling or experiment with the form. How do you make sure that that still fits in with the story, or do you decide, well, this is the moment that we can explode and explore?
Well, the way the script is set out is as Kieron read there, most of it is fairly standard. He lays out the panels and the description and everything, but when we get to the action pages, we switch to Marvel method, which I don't know if anybody knows what Marvel method is, but it's where basically the writer sort of says there's some fighting on this page. Then the artist sort of lays it out, and then the writer goes back in and adds the dialogue afterwards, which was set up in the 60s by Stan Lee to kind of get as many comics out the door as he could, because he was writing everything.
Yeah, it was like one guy and he was doing like 9 or 10 books a month, in which case you kind of had to work out a way to make it work. And it helps if you're working with Jack Kirby.
Yeah,
in that way.
Yeah. I'm not Jack Kirby, it's just a bit more complicated than that, the Kieron scripts. But we just, because we kind of wanted to do something different from, like I said, it was sort of the gang mentality, and we wanted to like bring what we do to the superhero thing. We wanted to do something unusual, so that was like fairly early on. We decided we wanted to do something like those double page spreads, and it was just sort of part of the style of the book from the beginning.
I think it was quite conscious. I mean, like I mentioned I haven't reread that script since I wrote it, so when I'm tripping over stuff I've said there, I'm amused. Oh, we were so young and naive. But yeah, it's like the We Free stuff, the idea that no one really picked up what Morrison and Quiley were doing with We Free.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we'll do that for one page and then say fuck it. It's
Yeah.
that kind of the idea that at least have an attempt to play with some of these ideas.
Yeah.
And it's only experimental in the form of superhero comics, but it's still,
And the idea as well we had with it as well was each time we do one of those double page spreads, we do that idea once and then we never do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably a stupid thing to do because after about 7 issues, we're like, no, we're going to
no, do it again.
But so that was it. Once we've done that multi-panel layout, that's gone. We never do that again, and so on.
I mean, comics tends to be so backwards looking. Well, I kind of think let's make rules for ourselves and be quite puritanical about it.
Yeah.
And it's like we don't do any pastiches of old comic covers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
which is quite a common thing, obviously.
Which is very common. It looks cool and everyone loves it, but it does prevent us creating any form of new dialogue about what covers could be.
Yeah.
And no, fuck that. Let's try to genuinely be a new superhero comic.
Yeah.
That's quite serious.
Yeah. That was the idea, anyway.
And let's take it back to even before issue 1. I mean, did you both pitch this to Marvel, or did Marvel decide that they wanted to, bring back the Young Avengers and were looking for someone to?
Well, it was part of the Marvel Now thing, which is where they've, I guess the end of last year. It's not a reboot, but it's kind of a lot of the series started again at #1 as a sort of
an accessible entry point.
Exactly, yeah, for new readers and so on. And as part of that, they wanted to bring back Young Avengers, which hadn't been around since 2009, something like that.
But Children Crusade was really Young Avengers. That fundamentally was Young Avengers V2, and we're actually V3 if you of decompress it. They kind of came to. I mean, when Marvel Now was happening, I was writing this big musical chairs game Marvel decided to play. I was writing Uncanny and Journey to Mystery, and they sort of, Axel came on the phone. He listed some books he thought might be are you interested in any of these? If you're interested in anything else, please, for God's sake, say. But this is what we're sort of thinking might be good for you. And it's like a list of six or seven.
And that's Axel Alonso. He's
the boss.
The boss at Marvel, basically.
Yes. He's also, I'm still incredibly nervous around editors, so anytime Axel specifically calls me, I'm like, shit, what have I done? Even when I know he's going to call me, and it's like, I'm always expecting to, I found you aren't Kieron, you're rubbish, bye. But he found out one of them was Young Avengers, and I sort of had to, as much as I liked the first run of Young Avengers, it didn't strike us as my sort of a book I would write, because it's a book based on, it's a weirdly traditional old school Marvel book, as in pre-noughties, and it's about, and some of the stories grow from these old continuity and all that, and which he does beautifully, but I just don't do that. This is fundamentally antagonistic to where I approach comics. So I thought there's no way I could do a traditional Young Avengers book. So I said, Axel, you sure? And he said, no, seriously, go away, think about it. We think you'll be interesting. So I kind of had to attack it and work out ways to sort of, whilst hopefully still be Young Avengers, make it something that I could possibly write. And part of the way of doing that was, well, let's just do let's get all my favourite people together and do it as our book. Because the one thing I never really did at Marvel before was a self-contained thing. Like all my stuff is entangled in crossover. I mean, Uncanny X-Men was basically AVX. It's all like the 20 issues leading up to AVX were basically prologue. Jim danced around all these crossovers. So the idea of doing something self-contained and based around the aesthetic me and Jamie creating indie books and all our favourite people and kind of my neurotic breakdown. That was the kind of I've got to do something really like full on and try to embrace the newness of it all, because it's often a book about newness explicitly. So that really. So I kind of said I wanted to work with these people, and they said, yeah, why not?
Pretty much, yeah.
And did you also say you wanted to start with a one-night stand?
No, actually, I wrote that specifically. I mean, did I tell you about this? I thought one reason I wrote the opening was like that was because...
Oh yeah, it was like a test.
A test, as in if Marvel will not let me write this, I do not want to write this book. Because I know I want to explore, I want to do that kind of stuff. And if there's a problem with someone having a one-night, waking up and without any, without any sort of sex shaming, without anything judgment, the idea this is perfectly natural and this is something that happens. Waking up in a strange boy's bed or waking up in a stranger's bed for the first time is a sort of magical moment, and how you feel at that time is interesting to fire through the metaphor of superheroes. So if we couldn't do that, we wouldn't want to do the book. So I could step back and say, well, that's okay, but it's just not my thing.
And is it important that...
but I'm amazed what they get as well. Generally speaking, we get away with most stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff we don't get away is normally like...
couldn't have anyone actually drinking.
Alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean,
Alcohol.
it's like that, that's kind of like anything that's actually illegal. They have issues.
Apart from punching people in the face.
Yeah.
So, like, that's fine. but alcohol, no.
You know,
for underage, no.
Yeah, I suppose maybe that's the American.
yeah,
viewpoint,
absolutely.
If
Yeah,
you're,
absolutely. Yeah.
under 21 Avengers.
Occasionally, some of my jokes, is, occasional line is just too rude, and I kind of know it. As in, I write as far rude as I can make it, and knowing they'll tell me no, and I'm fine to edit down because it's it's their book. But there's some stuff gets slightly less rude.
Yeah. But generally speaking, no, it's been fine.
And when it came to kind of assembling the team, Jamie, some of these characters have a lot of costume continuity and backstory. Some of them have been around for ages, some less so. How did you go about coming up with the visual look for the team? Did you want to streamline them, or?
Yeah, well, partly, yeah. But again, the same as with Kieron, I kind of went into it and said, if I do this book, I want to redesign X, X, and X. And if I can't, then I'm not really interested in doing the book, sort of thing. And again, they said yes. So, the thing with costumes and characters is that I always feel like the best costumes come out of the character's history and personality and all that kind of stuff. So, as well as I'm not going to ignore the previous incarnations, but also I want to change it into the style that we want to do with the book. And they were pretty good with it all, I think, so far. Yeah.
I run a podcast on my own called Decompressed, and I've just done one with Ming Doyle and Chris Anker and Jamie about costume design, which I'll be putting up online next week. So
where I go into detail about the Miss America costume and Wiccan's costume and things like that.
Talk about the Hawkeye problem. Not that no, as in the Hulkling Hawkeye problem.
Oh yeah. So this isn't. So as we're working on the design of the book. The new Hawkeye series was about to start as well. And as you're all working, various different cogs in the machine, you don't get to see everything that everyone's doing all at once. And I hadn't seen the current Hawkeye costume, which doesn't really feature in the book, but it's often on the covers with the purple arrow. Yeah, exactly. At the same time as designing the Hulkling one, which has the same purple arrow, is pretty much the same. And they both got approved. And then Hawkeye came out a couple of months before Young Avengers, and then Young Avengers came out. I was like, oh, why is he wearing Hawkeye's costume? Yeah. Didn't see it at the time. So, but then the thing with Hulkling is he's a shape changer, and his costume is actually really his skin. It's not. Yeah. So he's basically naked all the time.
And he's a big dirty fanboy.
Yeah,
so
and he's a big dirty fanboy. I just like Hawkeye. But
he's amazing. I love him.
But then because he's a shape changer, his costume can change. So it's been adapting throughout the issues. So now it looks different to how it did to start with. But yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, they're in costume now, but when the series starts, they're kind of out of costume. They're not.
Yeah. Billy doesn't put his costume on until issue 5, which is part of the point of it. It's like his little journey to get to that point where he has the new costume. And again, it's that same sort of thing where the costume comes from the character, and that's part of the character. So he looks at his old costume as a kind of nostalgia thing in the first issue, and then he's running around in jeans and a t-shirt.
But I really liked his civvies.
Yeah.
I love it when the X-Men are, not in costume. And it looked like specifically Hulkling and Wiccan actually shopped really well. They had really good taste. And did you have a very clear idea of?
Oh yeah. Every character, I've got a folder of reference and everything, and everyone's got their own style, and everyone I know what kind of clothes they would wear, because there's often a thing in mainstream comics where everyone sort of gets put in the same shirt and jeans. When they're out of costume. And I kind of feel like the characters should all have, because everyone in real life has got their own style, so everyone, the characters should have their own style as well. So even I don't think we've seen, other than in the t-shirt, we've not seen Kate out of costume, but I know exactly what she'd be wearing at any point and that kind of stuff. So it's all sort of, it's a big part of the planning for it as well. And that was a good thing about this book, was that, again, we started together in the beginning with it, whereas previous Marvel stuff I'd done, I was pretty much jumping onto an existing series, so I couldn't really do that kind of thing. Like the thing before that I did that was Defenders, which I took over from Terry Dodson, and that was all already set out by somebody else, and I couldn't change what he'd done. So it was good with Young Avengers to sort of start from the beginning and plan it all like that.
I mean, kind of one of my self-conscious aims in doing Avengers was trying to make Jamie into a superstar. You know, it was really the kind of like, let's really show off Jamie and make people realise how good he is, and that was kind of so kind of weirdly you get quite a case reviews saying the art's carrying the book, and I'm like, great, it's working.
That's a very Kid Loki way of looking at it, I suppose.
I mean, into my trap.
I mean, the way modern comics work now is the solicitations come out months ahead of time. You hear a lot about a series before it even starts. Kieron, when you were doing a lot of interviews before this launch, and you said you thought you sounded insane in all of them. I mean, we're 8, 9 issues in now. Do you feel like people have kind of, have they got it? Have they got on board? Or do they understand what you're doing with the book?
A lot of people have.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
I mean, I think it's a book powered by optimism, therefore I think I was over-optimistic by how many people would get it. You know what I mean? That's in like, I thought we can convince them round, we can genuinely convince them round. And we have, you know, the fact we're sitting here in a room with quite a lot of people here.
Yeah. Maybe
so
the
at least,
I don't know.
You know, this might be just everybody.
All the people that buy it right here.
But it's obviously right, the people who genuinely dislike the book, I see why they dislike the book. As in like, well, we were never going to do that, so... You know, it's hard not to, you know, it's hard to care about that, to be honest. But yeah, I still think I sound insane. I think, you know, I talk about the book and what we're trying to do in this kind of deliberate, it's so against what generally happens in superhero comics while still trying to be pop music. As in, this works like a superhero comic, but compared to almost everything else in the stand, our level of what characters are realistic, you know, what we use superheroes for, the fact that kissing is much more important than planet blowing up. These kind of different ways of approaching the thing just aren't very common at the moment. And the fact that this is an incredibly pretentious, like, high-action romance comic, essentially. I still think I sound insane. I think it's probably the big weakness of the book in that I kind of took quite 3 years at Marvel until I got a chance to really run around and be like an idiot. In the fact it's all coming out in this kind of like hyper-condensed burst, it means too much for me, and that's both a good and bad thing. So I don't know is the answer.
But
do you know what I mean?
So probably yes.
Yes.
But we certainly know what they're doing for Hogmanay this year. I mean, that's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're basically going to have a massive party.
Yes.
I don't think that's a spoiler to say.
No, we've said that.
There was a big announcement at San Diego, Issues 14 and 15. It came about because you realised the scheduling. 14 was going to come out in January and 15 was going to come out in... 14 was going to come out in December, 15 was going to come out in January. And then we said to them, obviously it normally comes out at the end of the month. We said, could we have issue 15 come out at the first week of the month so that the issues are either side of New Year's Eve and then turn that into 2 comics about the party on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that comics tend to be sort of disconnected, you know, the old idea of comics, it's the Christmas issue. There's not a lot of that, and I kind of did a Christmas issue in Gym. Yeah. And it made me kind of think, trying to get the synchronicity of the time you're reading it, and especially because this season starts in January, ends in first week of 2014. Yeah. This is a year, you know, and I felt that was a useful thing to grasp and make it feel like that as a statement, because I said, you know, there's a lot of that in it. Yeah.
So yes.
Yes.
So yeah, we're doing this thing with issues 14 and 15. Once the main bulk of the story for the first season's over, it's the party afterwards.
It's the after party.
Yeah, and I'm doing 5 pages in each issue, and then the rest of each issue is a bunch of different artists, each taking on roughly like one of the characters throughout the night. So basically, the Singles Club as the Young Avengers.
Yes. It's kind of it's much simpler than It's much simpler than Singles Club, but you know, nuclear physics is simpler than Singles Club. But you know, it's fun. It's these little 5-page stories. We're getting a lot of our favourite artists work with us. And it's just a fun little interlock, and you get these little spotlights. I mean, I've just finished writing it on the train, is the thing, which is why I'm kind of like, if I've even colour coded it, as in I've got the whole thing colour coded with different sections. It's great. It's just nice. You know, the fact that it's like issue 6 with Kate. I forgot Kate's name.
Kate Brown.
Just the fact we got to do that. Essentially, there's no one on the book who we're not friends with, and that's kind of, like I say, it's the gang mentality-ness to it. Yeah. You know. Actually, I don't know Joe Quinones personally, as I only know him by I like his stuff. I mean, he's the exception. I like everyone else.
I've met him. He's very nice.
But he's a friend then.
Yeah.
And those issues will, you know, bring in other characters from elsewhere in the Marvel universe. And,
yes.
I mean, it feels a little like the Young Avengers have been away in their own bubble for a bit. Is this bringing them back in from space to the current MU continuity? And will they be kind of, or is that too much?
I mean, it was kind of deliberate to have the threat of Mother mean that the adults couldn't see it.
Yeah.
So and that does remove us into our own little bubble, so we could have a year of this story without getting tied into the crossovers and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that always obsessed me about the whole. It's always the thing about Marvel Universe. If it's such a big threat, why doesn't Iron Man deal with it? You know, it's that kind of. And I like the age. I mean, there's a kind of explicit age gap thing in Young Avengers, quite explicitly a lot. And the idea that these are very important things, and it's the Don Quixote. You know, genuinely speaking, if you actually see a giant, whatever people are seeing windmills, fight that fucking giant, beat that giant to death, fuck that giant. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what that's what Mother is really about. Here's a problem you are dealing with, and as opposed to here's the threat that everyone agrees with. It's like if you actually genuinely see something in the world you think you can make a difference to, punch it. You know, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was part of it. And putting them by themselves, because so much about Young Avengers, this is sort of stuff which wasn't me, so I could never have written that as the kind of the. It's what Teddy put in the first issue. Your mum's Galadriel. It's the kind of dream that my real mum is someone special, you know, and it is, and it's this kind of this, and the fact that they're constantly hero worshipping kids, and the irony of the first version of Avengers, the moment when they were actually finally accepted as Avengers, they don't want to do it anymore. That's this kind of like that's the real sort of stab at the end of it, and I kind of wanted to sort of separate them, grow up a bit. I mean, I thought, you know, explicitly, I'm comparing them to the Skrull kids, and that, you know, what really is the difference? You know, you're fighting on the right side, but it's like one of you is called Hulkling, you know, and you have nothing to do with the Hulk. You know, this is. You know what I mean? This is you are fundamentally cosplayers as superheroes, and eventually, you know, fanfic is a beautiful thing, but eventually maybe you have to create something of your own as well if you want to push yourself in that direction artistically. You know, there's that's probably a wrong metaphor.
No, I think that.
Yeah, that metaphor is too mean to fanfic. I didn't mean it like that. You know what I mean? But eventually, you stop being a bad copyist to somebody else, and that's like same as any form of creative life. Eventually, you become yourself.
After a million words.
Yes, I mean, that's the classic. Yeah, so that's kind of what the second series is about.
We're going to open up to the floor for questions, so we'll have a mic going around, so if you have a question, raise your hand. But just before that...
I was just going to say, did you want to go through, we haven't got time to go through the page, how it's all put together kind of thing.
Oh.
Have we got time?
Sure. Well, yeah, we've got another 25 minutes, so...
Okay, have you got the script for the double page spread?
I probably do.
We're going to show just a little bit more of how we put together a page, because the thing with the double page spreads, as the first one that Kieron read out was, I followed it quite closely, but as we went along, and we have all these different ideas, and we throw them back and forth, and it's a lot more collaborative than you might normally do in a superhero comic. A lot of the time you get the script, you draw the page, it gets approved, you go off to the colorist and blah, blah, blah. But with this, we've been trying to do something a little bit different. So with issue 4, Nova, the kids are trapped by Mother in Mary Jane Watson's nightclub, Mary Jane from Spider-Man, and she owns a nightclub now apparently, and she's surrounded by the evil adults. Well, they're not evil, but they're possessed, and Nova breaks in and frees them. So I forget. Do you want to read?
Read the script? This is actually
read the script.
This is funny because this one is so not what happened.
Yeah.
This scene is sort of my tribute to that scene in Luther Arkwright. Luther Arkwright, amazing. Everyone read it. It's worth going to look at, even though we probably want to take it in a completely different way. Norvar jumps headfirst through the window, smashing the glass, using the momentum of his ship to send him flying through the room. He cartwheels through the lounge, straight through the groups. He athletically bounces and flips over scenery, firing all the way. He head-shots everyone in the room, who isn't a young Avenger, with neat little blips of energy. Heads explode, messily into solid clay. As he reaches the other end of the room, he starts to backflip straight out the glass. The caption would be, "I've met another Hawkeye. Didn't make love to that one." He was a man, also fond of purple. He was a pretty good shot. Okay, how do you present this fucker? We could do multiple panel momentism, big intro panel of him bursting through the wall, then go to 9-panel grid to get all the other moments to make it more like a direct Luther Arkwright pastiche. The most complicated one we want The most complicated one would be, which Jamie proved me wrong, the most complicated one would be to do the whole thing as a top-down plan with superimposed passages of Marvel Boy across the entire room. Close.
Almost.
I forgot about that one. If you wanted, it could be not top-down, but sort of side-on, so in a camera on the far wall saying Marvel Boy is entering the left of the room, his progress through the room to flying out the window on the far side. When you talked about this, you suggested doing an isometric layout, which also sounds great. Can you zoom in panels pointing to interesting stuff? Some of those can be actual text annotations if you like, which I'll write. I'll make you read this script, as you may want to set this up last issue in terms of layout clearly. Yeah, any of those would be great. Clearly, not a big deal or too tricky or anything. You're probably doing your sleep.
So I think you read that first part of that script to me on a train to a con or something, and I read through his ideas of how I wanted to present it, and I said I'm not going to do any of those. I want to do it as an isometric diagram. So I don't know if this is working now, but we can get the screen back and go full screen. So what I do when I'm preparing, I like to sort of lay out the whole room of any scene, and I often build models in a 3D program called SketchUp, so I can plan all the angles and everything, which made it very easy well, I say easy, it wasn't easy at all, but made it simpler to plan out how I was going to do this. So I made a model of this nightclub and basically stuck it on the page like that.
Do you remember like a first-person shooter game set in these sort of things, don't you?
Yeah. We never got to do that. Well, there's still a few more issues left, I might. And then sent this off to the team for approval, which is the route he takes. Obviously, it's very detailed. You can see exactly what's going on. But yeah, that was enough, and they said yes. And then started putting it together. And as I was putting, and this is one of those ones where it was a lot of back and forth. So I sent this off, and then I realised we were going to have a key and have some moments around, and I realised I had all this space that I could play with. So I said, well, why don't I put in these panels of key moments, which, they're in the wrong order, never mind, which I did next, so I started putting that in. And again, this was all back and forth, and we were discussing it as we were going around, and people came up with different ideas and things, and some from Kieron, some from the editors, and so on. And then, if I can get the final one up, once I'd done all this, Lauren, who's our editor, suggested putting little numbers throughout the page to show his passage, so you could see a lot more clearly exactly where he's going. And then we realised we could link those to the panels so that you could see, say, for example, number one panel with a number one, obviously, and matches where he's jumping through in the key. And once we put the numbers in, then Kieron realised, well, then we can put a key in down the side over there, so it's got all the numbers. And then that provides him with more option to have some inner dialogue from Nova and add a little bit more character to the page that wasn't there before. So there's all these little bits like where it's like, oh, I hope Kate sees me doing this, and things like that, which weren't in the, obviously, as you read out, they weren't in the script. So
I was just literally looking at what on earth could be possibly thinking.
Yeah.
And it is that level of, oh, no, oh, my shoes.
Yeah. So that's kind of an example of the sort of collaboration that goes on in this comic. And actually, panel 7, I think it was on the train, actually. I was just going to write, I want to do this isometric diagram when he's jumping around, and he's going to go up here, and he's going to jump over the DJ booth. And then Kieron went, oh, he's got to change the records. I was like, of course. So panel 7 is where he's changing the record. He's putting on Candy Stanton, of course.
That was the hardest thing to work out, actually.
Yeah.
I actually sat there and really tried to, what would he play? All the songs I wanted to drop had too slow a start.
Yeah.
And
so he wanted the song to like immediately play as he was landing after he put it on. And so it was Young Hearts Run Free. And then he dives out the other side. And that's how we put that page together. There we go. Okay.
Shall I mention my fuck-up?
If you want to. Go on, why not?
There is one fuck-up, which was I was an idiot. The top letter, the number 5.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't work out what that was.
Because this was at the pencil stage.
This is the pencil, so I had to do lettering then. So I did. I thought he was retrieving a record from like a multi-dimensional thing, and that's what he puts on the actual.
But what he's actually doing is he's grabbing the light fitting to swing round.
Yeah. So
because it's number 5.
It says a lot about comics that your immediate thought is, it's a multi-dimensional pocket.
Rather than, yeah.
You know.
But then to a little funny moment, of course, he's got a multi-dimensional pocket where he keeps his records.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he?
That'll certainly make it easier to get to your DJing slot if you don't have to carry
a
record case. I was going to ask you to tell your origin story briefly about how you found each other, but we're a little pushed for time. I'm sure these people have some great questions, so we'll bring up the lights. If you do have a question, just raise your hand. we have a microphone going around, and we'll try and get round as many as possible. We'll start down the front here.
This is a question about Novar's taste in music. It sounds like he's going through like those teenage phases where he sort of stumbles across something, loves it, and then he's going to get bored of it at some point. Are you going to go with that, and what's he going to change to?
He's got a, I mean,
He's having a country phase right now.
He's doing the country phase. That came from me and Jason Aaron. We were in the Korean restaurant we put in the comic, and we were just bullshitting some stuff. And it was a lovely meal. And we started talking country for some reason because he knows a lot more about country than I do. Then I had the moment. Let's make Norvar, because he's travelling. Give him a beard, because that's kind of like time travel and this kind of thing. So that's mainly Jason Aaron's fan service. Was my actual thinking there.
Yeah.
But the logic, no, I thought with Novar, is that kind of it's the enormous crush. I mean, it doesn't even need to be a teenage thing. I really got into comics when I was 25, and that was a proper crush. It was like discovering that there's not listening to music and realising, oh my god, the shop's full of this shit. It's been doing it, it's been happening for like 100 years, and they've got these.
Bless you.
Bless you.
You know what I mean? But so with Novar, since he isn't quite human. The first to knowledge, it's not like he gets necessarily bored of stuff. It's just that his new passion is what he's thinking about, and that's kind of what I wanted from him. I just wanted the infatuation, because it's one of the things that you kind of phrase. Some commentary around Novar sort of phrase. Even I use hipster as a shorthand. And he's not hipster at all. He's completely shamelessly in love with stuff, and there's nothing more less hipster than that. He's emotionally engaged with everything, and he's completely unashamed what people think of him about it. Does that answer the question? Yeah, and, there is that kind of discovering new stuff, and I mean, quite deliberately, Novar. There's nothing obscure about Novar. It's that kind of that he's generally speaking, he just grabs the best stuff. What will fill a dance floor, and there's something intrinsically like optimistic, to quote Tom Ewing. So that's my sort of thinking with him. It's weird because whilst I like everything Novar likes, I wouldn't say Novar's taste was my taste. And quite explicitly, this is almost all music. It's like I have deliberately not chosen anything from this year yet, that kind of thing. So there's stuff going on. And Novar scene in the party issue is the most phonogram thing I've ever gotten to Young Avengers. It's actually shocking.
That chap there, and if you have a question, hold up your hand, and I'll try and get around you.
Right. This is more of a question for Kieron. So I discovered or got into comics and you guys at the same time with Rue Britannia, and I mean it's kind of obvious where you're coming from with writing those characters, because late 20, early 30 something hipsters from southern England, but with this you're writing teenagers and teenagers from the States and elsewhere in the galaxy and the multiverse. But where do you, I guess, how do you write teens? Where do you come from to write younger characters? Because it's obviously not going to be the same as your kind of snarky, well-spoken 20-somethings.
I don't know. I'm mentally about 11, which kind of helps. I don't know. It's the thing that petrifies you. In that I'm a guy in my late 30s now, and you worry about that. There's a quote. Oh, who is it? The Whole Steady. Who's the singer of The Whole Steady? So I'm looking at Al. You might know. Is it The Whole Steady?
Craig, what's his face?
Yeah, Craig Thingamabob. I mean, I'm not a big fan, to be honest. I mean, I've never actually properly listened to them. But he quite regularly writes about teenage stuff. And he's a guy as old as I am. And he's the quote says, I think I understand being 17 better now than I did when I was 17. And I thought, that's an interesting idea, and I thought I could steal that line. And it's true, I don't think I've ever quite got over bits of that, and I sort of chew stuff over and trying to work out how it fits together in that way. But a refusal to patronise the emotions of the time, a refusal to think about it's something separate to how I live. And you sort of see it as there is a sort of continuum of stuff, in that it's that kind of thing. It's like just not othering it, and that makes it easier because teenagers don't really think of themselves as teenagers. But I worry about it, and it's like I'm worried about it now. I worry about it when I wrote Singles Club. I found Singles Club much scarier to write than Rue Britannia. In that kind of awareness, I was a guy in my early 30s at that point, writing late teenagers. And it's worse in phonogram because phonogram requires a cultural literacy which you don't need for Young Avengers. In that kind of the really, really fine detail is important. No, it scares the shit out of me.
Marvel now's produced a bunch of really critically acclaimed books, especially in comparison to the New 52.
You may say that.
Well, critically acclaimed, not me. Do you have any idea why that might be?
Jamie, do you want to be unemployed?
How to phrase it?
We don't know. I've never worked at DC.
Yeah, no, I've done like 10 pages there like 5 years ago. I mean, speaking in terms of Marvel, a lot of people have their individual voices, like say Hawkeye. Nobody could write that other than Matt. Thor, like Jason's doing amazing stuff on it, and Kelly Sue and Captain Marvel, and they all feel like that team's book, I think, is a way of saying it, and that to me seems like a recipe for success in terms of good comics, basically. Yeah,
I think there's a greater willingness to make books stand on their own at Marvel, as in the kind of, this is what Jamie says, it's about, it's not that complicated. You put a really good artist and a really good writer, often even the same person, on a book that they care about, and you step back, and that's kind of the stuff that Marvel gets critically acclaimed is generally, I mean, talk about Thor, I mean, Esad was born to, in fact, possibly be Thor.
Yeah.
You ever met Esad? He's enormous.
Giant bear of a man. It's amazing.
Fantastic guy.
He picked you off the floor like
really was.
easily.
I would not like to make him angry.
No.
But Esad and Jace, and you just step back a bit, and books are generally worse. I forget whose line it is, but basically, if you do that and you really can't go that wrong, there's the real politic of like working in comics. I don't know. I would say that would be it. I just don't want to slag off DC. I've never worked for them. But a lot of my friends quit. That's the thing. I just say it's weird, people ask you, do you want to work for DC? And it's like, a lot of the people who've left, I'm close friends with. I can't see that I'd do the same. I can't see, if they quit, there must be a reason for that.
Yeah. And a question from up the back.
So I won't be announcing Superman.
Hi, you started out doing the independent stuff, and back in a time when webcomics weren't as big. Do you think now with webcomics it's easier for people to start out and get something done, or do you think it's just with the amount of them out there, they just get lost in it?
I think it's harder to do webcomics now than we started. Would you agree? I mean, at least it's hard enough to be as successful as the people who were in essentially, quote unquote, our generation.
Yeah.
Because as you said, there's a lot of, I don't want to use the word noise, but there's a lot of volume. That's quite good.
Yeah.
That's not a bad phrase. So yeah, it's trickier. But the point about comics is doing comics in that way. In that the audience almost doesn't matter. In that the audience is nice to have, and you'll be writing it ideally for people to read. But the low ceiling to comics of just doing it means a lot. And and if the work is good enough, you stick that on Tumblr and it gets 8 million retweets.
Yeah.
Good work really is its best advertisement.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. With things like Tumblr, it's a lot easier to get an audience in that respect, I suppose. And yeah, you do get.
It's harder to monetize the audience. Yes. That's what I understand.
Yeah, that's a different thing. But,
talking to Tumblr, how would you pronounce GIF?
Wow, no, so this is the thing. It's supposed to be GIF, isn't it? But nobody says that.
I say GIF.
It's a living language. The chap with the glasses?
I think it's fair to say the breakout star of Young Avengers is America Chavez, mostly because she's objectively amazing and has the greatest costume in comics. But at the moment she's also, that's following the sort of well-established tradition of being the most mysterious one at the moment. We don't know an awful lot about her. So how daunting is it knowing that eventually you're going to have to flesh her out and meet the expectations?
Well, I'm not sure I will. You're making a big presumption there. I know exactly where Chavez comes from. Or at least, I know all that stuff. And it's always the question of what am I going to tell you? No, and it's the sort of thing. I'm surprised I haven't seen anyone who's pieced together even part of it yet. And I thought it was being quite obvious by now. Actually, I'm lying. At somebody kind of hinting. I saw one person in one comment thread have about a third of what I'm doing with her.
Yeah.
And so that makes it sound incredibly complicated. It's not. This is absolute. She's a pop superhero. She needs that. really iconic superheroes generally have a core idea to them. Like, you can pretty much get them in a sentence. I mean, I'd always had trouble writing some characters because they're a little bit, the subtleties kind of makes it quite hard to grasp. But, you know, someone like Cyclops or Wolverine, they're very easy characters to grasp, or Spider-Man. You know, what motivates them, what makes them different to, you know, why is the Hulk different from Thor? They're both super strong dudes, but you know, you must be able to really sort of focus on the iconic resonance of them. I'm going to say that.
But in terms of Miss America's costume, I mean, it's basically, her costume it can be any clothes with stars and stripes. And,
basically, yeah.
It's not a costume, it's a style.
Yeah, exactly. It's because she was in the series before Vengeance, where she was part of this team who sort of did some superheroing behind the curtain, behind the scenes, and she was never interested in like the fame and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it felt like that kind of street level heroing. I didn't feel she'd have like one costume. I think she'd just have a bunch of clothes that, like, you look at that and you go, yeah, that's Miss America. But so yeah, I've got like another 10 outfits planned. I doubt I'll get to use them all, but yeah.
And do you think that's why people enjoy cosplaying as?
Yeah, certainly part of it. I mean,
what was it Fraction was talking about? The, you know, easy cosplays, a very useful attribute in comics.
Yeah. It's like the Hawkeye one. You just put the t-shirt on and some plasters, and then you're Hawkeye. It's that kind of thing. Yeah.
He's not entirely a stupid man, that man.
No. If you have a question, just put up your hand and we'll try and get to you. But this lady here.
Yeah, so far it feels like, although you've got moments for all the characters, it feels like it's been mostly Billy and Teddy's story. I was just wondering how you chose which characters to focus on, which characters to focus on less. Like, for example, Speed, who is my favourite character, so I miss him.
Speed.
Yeah.
Annihilated that existence, Speed, sorry. Or is he? No, he's fine.
He's not fine.
No,
he's not dead.
Or is he? The worst thing about me and Jane, we just constantly threaten to kill characters. It's just like, maybe. It was tricky for me. You're right. It's the Billy-centricness of Young Avengers was something I kind of took from it, and I kind of I didn't even necessarily like it in the original Young Avengers. I agreed it was a bit Billy-centric, but I pretty much ended up making him be the MacGuffin. You know, he's absolutely core to what we're doing. I've got to be careful because I've got to step around some spoilers essentially in this point. I wanted slightly, you know, Billy is a key part of the plot because he's created the situation, and that was kind of my thing going forward in there. At the same time, I didn't want it to be quote-unquote just about Billy, or rather Billy's straight family relationships. Specifically, I was quite interested in I thought the one thing that hadn't really been done previously was his relationship with the parents who brought him up. There was a lot more about the fantasy parent of the Scarlet Witch and this magical new, you know, brother in the case of Tommy. And whilst they're interesting, I kind of thought, what you've forgotten there. So I wanted to kind of move the plot there a bit. And having Tommy on the team to begin with, A, messes up diversity some more. The diversity was already kind of iffy anyway. And B, it makes it even more like Billy-centric in that way. So that's one reason I can't really use him in that way. And also the fact that Miss America and Marvel Boy and Loki are more sociopathic than him means that reduces his role in the team dynamic. So I thought moving him off to one side, and you know, I really liked writing him in issue 6. It's one of the things that really made a lot of sense to me. But I just couldn't see him as easily in the team dynamic. At the same point, I thought I also couldn't see him staying on with the parents either. That was my kind of, I could see him. He was the guy who didn't want to give up superheroing. He would have gone out and done stuff, and I kind of like that. I mean, weirdly, he became in issue 6 a voice. His opinions are closer to mine than I think most of the characters in the book. So yeah, that was what I was sort of thinking. Something's really cold and mathematical. It really is. What is the point of this character and this thing, and what will having him mean? So yeah, that was a lot. Does that answer everything? Mm-hmm. He's good though. He might not be dead.
A question from over here. If you still have a question, put up your hand. No.
Tonight and in the introduction to the trade, you keep on talking about the team working on this book as a gang, but I keep on hearing band when you say that. I can project in that as a band of people. And I was wondering if that was sort of a fair projection, and if not, what's the dynamic like as a group of people working together if you're so in tune with each other?
Well, I mean, the best bands often seem like a gang anyway, so it's a similar kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. Because obviously it's mostly the Phonogram Singles Club team was me and Kieron
and that does feel
Matt.
like a band.
Yeah. And then we brought in some other people as well, and I don't know.
It's kind of I went for gang rather than band because it is a bit Last Gang in Town, which becomes basically the Clash, you know. So that was on my mind, but really it just felt too big, as in like it felt too big to describe as the band and too fluid, as in some people's parts of it were only going to be like cake for an issue. And saying band made it didn't really feel how it felt. I mean, you know, as I said, Phonogram feels like a band. So I think the cool part of it is a band who happens to also be a gang, and then it's their gang mates, and then we get into violence and stabbings.
Yeah.
And it's no good. Yeah. So that was my thinking anyway. I don't know, I think you're right, it's an interesting why I went for those words.
And when will we see Phonogram again?
Hopefully towards the end of next year.
Yeah, I mean, the maths are like second half. We've got to do hard. You know, we've made promises before, but the hard maths are. What's the time? It's August. Maybe this time next year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all written, but it's kind of like we've got things we've got to get out the way before doing it. Really.
Yeah, because we were going to get a lot more done, but then there were things like getting pneumonia, which sort of does affect your plans a little bit, and things like that last year. So. But it's still on the cards, it's still happening. I
think it's one of the things that, you know, we sort of thinking about doing it at the same time was the plan. Yeah. But even putting aside the live situations, I think no matter how much help you get on the book, the work expands to fill the space. Because, you know, you're such a perfectionist, you want to put more detail and stuff in.
Yeah, I'm incapable of rushing, which is the worst thing, because then it means if I've got a page to do that I have to get done that day, I can't rush it. It just means I'll be working until 6 in the morning.
Right.
So I was up until 7 a.m. Thursday to get something done, and so I'm not very good at rushing, which is a problem. It's not a problem because it means the pages look okay, but
I can always phone it in.
Well.
I cheated a little there and got my question in at the end because I'm afraid that is actually all we have time for. Remember, these guys are signing those trades of Young Avengers, and there's lots of other material in there. You turn right, but if I could ask you to stay seated whilst we kind of get our gear and get out the door. But yeah, could you give a very big hand to Kieron Gillen and Gillen and McKelvie?
Yeah, I've just seen Kieron Gillen and Jamie McKelvie, part of the stripped section of the Edinburgh Book Festival. They're promoting their Marvel Now book, Young Avengers. It was an hour Q&A session, part Q&A session, and basically going into the details of what they do and how they put the book together. Anything they do or say is exciting to me, actually, as bizarre as that sounds. They're two of the most innovative and talented guys working in comics right now, and to be honest, just hearing their thought processes and working processes is a delight. Seeing how they communicate firsthand, seeing the work that Jamie puts into, you know, constructing the page, Pentatonic Cut, which program he uses, all of that, hearing Kieron's thought processes and how he constructs character, how he constructs dialogue, how he actually puts a page together. It's all gravy, it's all good, it's all great. I was wall to wall in heaven from start to finish. This is my first time. I came purely for these guys. They did a little they did they're best known for Phonogram. It's an image series. It's one of the most remarkable works of fiction I've ever read, and you know, I'm a lifelong devotee because of that. That comes across really badly. Sorry about that. Fanboy, yes. So I came for them, but to be honest, I've been really impressed with what I've seen. I think it's been and the day that I've been here, I've been extremely impressed. It's a really well put together event. It's the whole issue of bringing comics into literacy. There's an old Alan Moore, who's an extremely famous comic book writer, had an argument years ago about essentially why should comics have ratings, a rating system, because, you know, adults only, for mature readers, etc., why should they have that when books do not? And it's an interesting argument, but because of course comics can show something far more graphically, if you'll excuse the pun, than literature can. I think the argument as to whether or not they're a viable form of, you know, not just for kids sort of thing, I think that argument's dead and gone now, because there's just been so many great works out there, so many innovative works out there, works of education, works that inspire, works that communicate. You just have to, I could spend hours actually listing the works, not just of Western origin, but of Eastern origin, of Middle Eastern origin, that have basically just, you know, affected opinion and people and their behaviour and their actions and their thoughts all over the world.
Well, I just went and saw Gillen and McKelvie and Kieron Gillen give a talk about Young Avengers. They're two of my favourite creators, so it was very insightful and I enjoyed it a lot. Well, I first found them in Phonogram, Kieron Gillen and Gillen and McKelvie. And just it was so unique, you know, the mixture of music and comic books. Comic books aren't an audio medium, so you wouldn't think those two things would go together. But they managed to twist it in such a way and create such a compelling story and characters that I just immediately latched onto it. When I heard they were writing Young Avengers, I just thought it's a perfect mix. You know, these two people, they capture the popular culture and zeitgeist very well. That writing young people now, you know, teenagers, just absolutely perfect. And plus, Gillen and McKelvie draws the best fashion you will ever see in comic books. Yeah, it's my first time here, but if you keep on having events like this, I'll be here every year. Creating that distinction between sort of mainstream comics and sort of independent comics, I guess you'd call them, but they're not really. It's more sort of not superheroes, essentially. I think nowadays a lot of people understand that there is a difference between them, and comic books, you know, when you say comic books, you don't mean superheroes. You can mean any story that can be told in sequential art. I think a lot more people understand that nowadays. I think it's just try to get people to come to them. I mean, you've held this today and it's been really busy. I think if you did this in Glasgow, did it in Aberdeen, Dundee, I mean Dundee's the biggest comic book city in Scotland, you could get a big audience essentially. And social media, that's where I heard about this. So yeah.